I think we're good. Okay, so today we're going to be doing First Samuel chapter 21 and 22. I know it's been a while, but we want to give you guys a chance to catch up. And if you've been following any sort of news, then you know it's been kind of interesting here in California. But as for us, we're safe. We just had to get into the swing of things. With all the stuff that goes on around here. Plus, the kids are now out of school, so that means we're back to doing some blended studies, and work is being done from home. I'm still chugging along, trying to finish up with my last semester of school. So it's been interesting. So I am glad we're back here, back on track. Um, so we kind of stopped at, I believe, First Samuel chapter 20. We're going to do chapter 21 and 22 today. And this is not in an effort to actually catch up, but this is how we were planning on doing it from the beginning, because these two chapters can't really be separated. So over the last few weeks, I've been looking over this text, and the title was kind of difficult for me because I so didn't want to give this much credit to an antagonist in the next couple of chapters. But there's such a wealth of information that has come out of this that I think it's very important to kind of look at this particular character as they come on the scene, and once again kind of dig into the mind, the psyche, what's going on, how we can also see ourselves in a lot of these characters, and then move forward in our study of First Samuel. So thank you guys for joining in. And this video is live, so it'll replay for those of you who come in a little bit later. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start at First Samuel chapter 21. In chapter 20, David, just to give you a little recap, David and Saul devise their plan to figure out if David and Jonathan devise their plan to figure out if Saul is truly trying to kill David. And 21 is right after David leaves. Him and Jonathan covenant, protect my seed, I'll protect your seed. We're still, brothers to the end. And, I don't know when I'm going to see you again, but I have you forever. So 21, it says, Then David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? There's so much in that first line, so we're going to kind of unpack a couple of things before we move forward, just to give a lot of context. So Nob is a city of priests that is between Jerusalem and I believe Gibeah. And so it is actually within the territory of the Benjamites. It's not in the territory of Judah, but it sits right on the edge. And there's a priest there by the name of Ahimelech, and he is, if you remember, kind of back. I know if you haven't, been reading in, Torah and in Judges and Joshua, the priests or the people were allotted space within certain tribes. So Ahimelech is a priest, and he is within the territory of the Benjamites in a priestly city called Nob. Okay, Ahimelech's name is very interesting. Also, it's Ahi like Ach, like brother, Ahi, my brother, right? The I told you the I part says my brother, king. So it's interesting because there's no definite article there to tell you like the king or the brother who is his friend the king, but his name means either brother to the king, or my brother is king, or brother of a king. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he is necessarily related to a king, but in this passage it's kind of interesting because he becomes an ally, if you will, to David, who in previous chapters as a young man had been anointed as the next king. So I thought that was a really interesting correlation between the name of Ahimelech and his relationship to David. It also is important to note that at another portion of the text, when Jonathan goes up to the garrison of the Philistines and Saul is with his men, there is a man by the name of, where is his name? Jonathan fearing attack. He asked a priest by the name of, I think, Ahiab or not Ahitub, because that's a little bit further. I believe it's Ahiab, and it's theorized that this is actually the same person. So, Ahiah, I'm sorry, the son of Ahitub, and it's Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, Yahuwah's priest, wearing an ephod. Okay, so it is theorized that this is actually the same person, because when you look up Ahimelech and his lineage, he is actually the grandson of Eli. He is a priest, and his father is Ahitub. So I thought that was very interesting, and we'll see that played out later on in this chapter, and we can revisit it and see if there's some correlation there. Okay, so let's keep going. Verse 2, he was afraid at the meeting of David and said, "Why art thou alone and no man with thee?" So we know David is was over Saul's men. So David being by himself was a little suspicious. Like, what are you doing out? What's happening? He's afraid. We don't necessarily know why he's afraid, but it may be that he's just like, kind of like a little thrown off. Like, what's happening here? And David said unto Ahimelech the priest, "The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I command thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such place." So David lies. This is one of those moments where his lie is literally to the preservation of his life. And he also lies because everybody knows in some degree, it's just, it's communal living, but there's some tension, right? There's some things going on, word buzzes, people live in the temple, people live in the temple, people live in the priestly area, people live where the king is, word gets around, right? And so nobody really knows what's going on, but of course people talk. And so Ahimelech's fear could have been, okay, you come in here, I don't know what's going on, what is this all about? And so in an effort, in a lot of ways, to save Ahimelech from having to even say anything about David, David lies to him. He doesn't want Ahimelech probably to be seen as his ally, because if he's seen as an ally to him, as you know, Saul is after anyone, even his own son, who seems to have taken allegiance with David. Okay. So, verse 3, "Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever there is present. And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under my hand, but there is hollow bread. If the young men have kept themselves at least from women." So David is hungry. He didn't leave. He didn't pack provisions. When he found out that Saul was after him and Jonathan agreed, David immediately left. He didn't tarry. He didn't wait behind. So at this moment, everything that's provided for David is literally going to be through the hands of Yah's providential care. So when he asked him for bread, if you remember from the construction of the temple, there are certain things that are in the temple all the time. The showbread is one of those things. There is the candlesticks. There is the lighting of the candlesticks that is not supposed to go out in the temple. So there essentially is always provision in Yah's house. Yah's house is not like the house of pagan gods where you put out things and then they are not, then they just, you take them and you toss them. There's not waste in Yah's house, and there's a reason, a purpose for everything. So the lesson, I guess, in this is that there is always bread in Yah's house. So it's interesting because Ahimelech here explains to David, this bread is not common bread. This is set apart bread. This bread is set apart for a particular function. And common bread is just bread made for anything, right? But this bread was made for a particular purpose. But he tells them, if you've kept yourself from women, and it wasn't this idea of, that women are so terrible and that they're so disgusting, but the function of this place and of the temple is this bread is presented before Yah. And what have you done to consecrate yourself or set yourselves apart before I take something that's hallowed and put it into your vessel, your body? So verse 5, and David answered the priest and said unto him, of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days, since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common. Yea, though it was sacrificed, yea, that it was sanctified this day in the vessel. So the priest gave him hollow bread, for there was no bread there but the show bread that was taken from before Yahuwah, to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. So every day this fresh bread was made. I think it's really interesting here because I know a lot of times in our zeal we seek to do things in our own understanding of how Yah would want them done. And when I was thinking about this, I wonder how many people would have been so righteous that they wouldn't have given David the bread. They've been like, you know what? No, it's not for you. This is his particular function. Missing the actual provision of there always being food in Yah's house. You know, so that dialogue allowed Ahimelech to see, one, where David's heart was and what he planned on doing and his understanding of Yah's law, and he gave him something that was literally from before Yah. So I thought that was very interesting. I really sat back and was like, would some of us have let David starve because of our simple understanding of the function of things rather than looking at the spiritual meaning and provision of that bread being there? And so Ahimelech was even more righteous, if you will. And a verse came to my mind as I was looking at that, because that verse that says, I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed go begging bread. David was being provided for even as he had to flee from Saul. And his provision constantly came from Yah, so that as he's leaving and as he's running from Saul, Yah is constantly putting provision in his place. And had Ahimelech withheld the provision of the bread, then David wouldn't have been able to see in that moment Yah's providential care. And it gets even more in depth after this, which is very interesting. How what is done ahead of time, what is done in, like we mentioned in the last lesson, when Yah prepares a table before you, all the things that are in your path that you need are right there. And as you're obedient, they're provided. And as you're obedient, they're provided. And so no, we don't necessarily have this idea that there's a pack of stuff, you know, a bug out bag that David threw on his back when he left, but his bug out bag was essentially Yah and his provisions along the way. But those provisions were made because of David's obedience. The provisions weren't made just because it was, oh, you didn't prepare, so here I am, you know, giving you things. No, the provision was made because David had done things in obedience before then. Check out the next thing that's here that is a part of David's obedience. Okay, so he gave him the hollow bread that was taken before Yah. And so verse 7, now a certain man, keep your mind on this man, because he's going to come back around. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before Yahuwah, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chiefest of the herdmen that belonged to Saul. And David said unto Ahimelech, and is there not here under thine hand a spear or a sword? Nor, he says, a spear or a sword, for I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. And the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, there is none like that, give it to me. So not only is there provision in Yah's house for bread, and that provision is provided to David because he is literally, has not wavered from doing what Yah has told him to do. So he gets the provision of physical food. Then he doesn't have a weapon because he just like literally left in that moment. And when David, with the zeal of Yah, defeated and saved Israel from the Philistines by defeating their chief warrior, Goliath, that sword is also stored there with Ahimelech. So it's all, I don't know, if you ever think about like that moment where everything just kind of comes together perfectly, like he didn't keep the sword for itself, he didn't keep it as some kind of, token of, oh, look how great I am, and I'm going to keep this on my mantle, and every time I walk into my house, I'm going to look at it. No, it was stored and presented before Yah as a symbol of David's, obedience, and Yah being the one who gave David the strength. So David didn't keep it as a token of his own glory, but he handed it to whomever, and they put it in Yah's tabernacle during that time. And when David was on his way out with nothing, the very thing that he did in obedience is going to be literally what saves his life in subsequent chapters. All right, back to Doeg. So the title of our lesson comes from this guy, Doeg. He's mentioned just ever so briefly right here. Verse 7, now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day. So, David, Ahimelech, Doeg, a witness, if you will. And he was detained before Yah. For the last few weeks, that has been wrecking my brain. I'm like, okay, Nob, to my knowledge, is not a city of refuge in the list of cities of refuge. So I was like, okay, what is he doing detained? Why is he there? Where did this Edomite come from the beginning? All right, so Doeg was, and the word is atzar, and it means to stop or to restrain. So he was restrained, either in prison or shut in, because he either was a violator of something or they were saving him from himself. He was a foreigner. We don't necessarily know if he was a POW, like a prisoner of war, okay, that he was brought along out of the camp of the Edomites. But we know from 1 Samuel 14, 4 and 7, that Saul had battled with, 14:47, that Saul had battled and overtaken a couple of groups. And so let's look at who they are. So Saul took the kingdom over Israel and fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab, and against the children of Ammon, and against Edom, and against the kings of Zobah, and against the Philistines. Whithersoever he turned himself, he vexed them. So we know that Saul had gone to battle against the Edomites and the Ammonites and the Philistines, okay? So we have this Doeg the Edomite, who's within Benjamite territory, which is Saul's tribal territory. He's being held, restrained, detained for some reason, but we know that he has previous relationship with Saul because he was called Doeg the Edomite, the chiefest of the herdmen belonging to Saul. Okay? So he has a position, and a pretty high position. All right? We also know that Saul has a thing for not following through and trying to hold on to powerful men, because he tried to keep Agag, the king of the Amalekites, after Yah told him to wipe everybody out. So these are just some like little nuances that we know from before. Doeg's name means anxious, which is very interesting. It actually means anxiety. That's what the name means, and it has to do with the idea of a fish, or the fin of the tail of a fish when it darts back and forth and it sways. So he was a kind of an unsettled person. Now, names mean something in the Hebrew culture, maybe not so much in our culture today, but names are descriptions often of people. You were named based upon who you were, your characteristics. Parents didn't often name their children before they met them or saw their personality, because your name kind of preceded you in a lot of ways. So Doeg's name means anxious. Very interesting that Doeg and Saul are close, because they both are a little ticky, if you will. Doeg and Saul both seem to have an internal conflict. This is going to be confirmed in a second. And there's like a heaviness, troubled sorrow that is the base of this anxiety. We're going to see that also explained. So two unsettled individuals together make for a very, very dangerous combination when it comes to relationship, okay? And they both seem to be pretty self-governed. Now, Doeg, because he could potentially be either a captive from a previous battle, or he could be a traitor to his own people, is why he probably was kept alive. So that's also something to note, that he has, obviously based upon the fact that they called him Doeg the Edomite, it's being brought out that you belong to another group, yet you are in this group of the Benjamites working for Saul, the king of Israel. And where's your loyalty, right? Why are you being trusted? What have you done to be trusted? Because the Edomites are not allies to the Israelites. So what have you done to prove, if you will, your allegiance to Israel? We don't know. All right, let's keep going. It'll unravel. So, verse 10. So David rose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said unto him, Is not this David the king of the land? Did not they sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? I don't know if anybody sees I guess, kind of the comedy in this, but David's reputation, and maybe he doesn't even know this at this time because that wasn't David's focus, had already begun to precede him. People in other lands already know who David is. Achish, king of Gath, remember, this is Goliath's people, right? So his name and his fame, if you will, has gone before him. So you can also see how Saul could have been kind of perturbed by David and by the way and by how Yah had elevated the name of David even before him, even in the eyes of other nations. He's called the king, right? So nobody even really sees in other lands Saul as a king, because remember, the king is supposed to go out and battle. The king and the one who is a captain over Yah's army should be in charge. But Saul, in his want to kill David, had then also been a vehicle through which David was elevated, because he keeps sending him out, go out and fight on the front line and go out and fight. So then who do they see as a leader? The one who's a leader is the one who's going out and going to battle. So he's put all of this into David's hands to cause him to stumble, but what he put in David's hands, as we saw before, because David acted wisely, is what has prospered David, not only in the sight of the people, but also in the sight of Yah and the foreigners. Okay, so verse 12, and David laid up these words in his heart and was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. So where other people would have said, oh, they know me. Okay, let me go in here and try to, no, he's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I'm not just like this regular guy out here running from Saul. Like, now I have enemies. When people see me, they see me as an enemy. They see I'm not a lone person out here, fleeing for my life. I'm a representation of Israel now. So, okay, I can't just be like this guy who's running. I'm gonna hide over here for a little bit. Now, I'm afraid he might kill me because he sees me as a way to take down my people. So David took these words to heart, and he was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. And he changed his behavior before them and feigned himself mad in their hands and scrabbled on the doors of the gate and let spittle fall down his beard. So he was like, okay, I'm going to have to pretend to be a crazy person. That's pretty, but you know what? It's not funny because, he's literally doing it for his life. But he immediately was like, okay, got to do something, because I can't let them think that I'm here as a threat, because then that threat would then also, one, harm the people, but also they're going to try to take me. And then if they take me, then either they're going to kill me, or then they're going to use me as a bargaining chip and hand me back over to Saul, and then he's going to kill me. This is not good. So he just acts like he's crazy. Like, man, lost his mind. So he starts letting spit fall and scratching on the gates, just acting like he's out of his mind. So, one, they're going to not think it's him. It's like, man, okay, it looked like him, but this man is crazy. And the David, we know, the one who's a mighty warrior, yeah, get this crazy man out of here. So, and then Achish said unto his servants, Lo, ye see this man is mad. Wherefore then have you brought him to me? Have I need of madmen that you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? He's like, I'm not letting a crazy person come into my house. Now, this is a wonderful lesson to heed. if a foreigner could see this, then we also should take into account the people that we let into our spaces. But he's like, no, I don't care how much it might benefit me. Maybe this possibly could be David, but no, absolutely not. This bad man is not coming here. All right, so that whole thing ended for David at that moment. So he didn't go to Achish and to make allegiance with the king of Gath. He moves on. Chapter 22. David therefore departed thence and escaped to the caves of Adullam. And when his brother and all his father's house heard it, they went down thither to him. They don't have cell phones back then, but when you have family who care about your well-being and people who have your back and know that you are in a strait, if you will, in a tight place, people will find a way to find out about you. And so, however, they've been told, we don't know if Jonathan went and told his family, hey, my dad's trying to kill David, he had to run, don't worry about him. We don't know, but David's family were keeping track of where he was. And obviously, David was well known, not only by his deeds, but also by face. When people saw him, they knew who he was. And so his family and brethren heard it, so the word was buzzing, that he was in Adullam, and they went down to him. And everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented gathered themselves unto him, and he became captain over them. And there were with him about 400 men. So, you remember David's brothers, right? David's brothers were the baddest warriors that Israel had. When Samuel went to go anoint a king, he looking at David's brothers like, oh, this must be the king. Oh, this must be the king. Oh, so he has brothers who are warriors, and they also believe now. They watch him be anointed, but now it makes sense. They're like, we have to join with him. He's not going to fight by himself. And so the people who are discontented are set apart, because you don't. If Saul is after David, then everybody is in distress. He was also trying to kill Samuel. So David's family is like, okay, well, we have a better chance of joining with our brother who Yah is with than being left in a land where we could either be pursued or killed or tortured, trying to figure out where he is. Let's go and let's strengthen him. And so I thought it was interesting because this passage is very much so brings to remembrance the picture of the Messiah, where you have a king leading, and all these people are, the whole nation during the time of HaMashiach was turned upside down. And the people that gathered to the Messiah were the ones who were, as it says in here, discontented with the way things were. And they were waiting and hoping for relief from tyranny and from being oppressed by the system. And so David, in this sense, represents a Messiah, in a sense that, like, there is a time that's coming that will be better, but there also is that agitation or that discontentment period that comes before that time. Okay, so then he becomes the captain over them, and there are about 400 men. Verse 3, and David went thence to Mitzpeh of Moab, and he said unto the king of Moab, let my father and my mother, I pray thee, come forth and be with you, till I know what Elohim will do for me. And he brought them before the king of Moab, and they dwelt with him all the while that David was in the hold. I think that's kind of interesting, because it's super important to follow, and I know it's hard sometimes to follow lineage and to follow like certain relationships. And I know there's this whole thing going around that Ruth may have been an Israelite, not a Moabite, and there's all this stuff. But I think it's very interesting that when David was in a strait and he needed somewhere for his family to go, he went to another part of his family. Remember, Ruth was a Moabite, so there is a connection between his great-grandparents, right, and this place, Moab. And he goes back and he entrusts his family into this place. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know how much weight that holds, but it's very interesting that he went back to Moab, where he could almost claim, in a sense, dual citizenship for his family. Like, hey, Jesse, the son of Obed, right, who is then connected to Boaz, who's connected to Ruth, And there's a tie there, and that tie actually works in the favor of David to keep his mother and his father safe during this very, very unsettling period. Verse 5, and the prophet Gath said unto David, abide not in the hold, depart and get thee into the land of Judah. Then David departed and came into the forest of Hereth. Where the prophet Gad came from is also interesting. We have to understand that when we're reading through scripture, there is a very important surface narrative, but there is a huge interconnection of people. And people know other people, and they may not be the main person in the story, but there is influence. So this prophet comes to David, and he's like, hey, go. And he listens to him. So this Gad individual must have been very, very important, either in that region or somebody who would have been seen as bringing a word from Yah to David, and David heeds it, and he goes. Knowing the difference between when a person has a word from Yah and when a person just is rambling is very important too. So there had to be some foreknowledge, because David didn't operate, as we've seen up until this point, didn't operate in, loose ends and whatever somebody says, I just do. It had to be in the line with what Yah was saying. All right, verse 6. When Saul heard that David was discovered, and the men that were with him, now Saul abode in Gibeah under a tree in Ramah, having his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing about him. So he's driving his own self crazy about a person who's literally running from him. So imagine the scene. It's Saul, and he's in Gibeah sitting under a tree, like back to a tree. He has a spear in his hand, right? And then he has men circled around him. He's paranoid out of his mind, which makes, I can say it makes no sense, because this is all happening in his head, but for a person to have had such a spiritual experience 2 chapters ago, right, where you're laying down, you're on the ground, vulnerable, Yah is even still trying to draw you, and you're still pursuing David. A person, and it brought to mind, like, a person can have an experience and still be hell-bent on their way to hell. And sometimes some of us trust so much in people's experiences and not in their actual actions. Because if Saul was really righteous and if David was really unrighteous, then wouldn't Saul be the one who would be acting as David, waiting for Yah to recompense and bring vengeance upon his enemy? But Saul is constantly pursuing somebody who's running from him. So it shows you that there's this strange dichotomy between Saul and what he shows on the outside, and then what he actually does in his actions. It's very interesting, and we'll unpack that a little bit more. Okay, so he's sitting under the tree with his his spear in his hand, servants standing around him. Verse 7. Then Saul said unto his servants that stood about him, hear now, ye Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? So he's like sitting here giving a speech about David, because he's seeing that men are now joining with David. He's like, okay, I have to almost bribe them to stay with me. Like, is he going to make you great? Is he going to make you rich? Is he going to give you vineyards? And so on verse 8 he says, that all of you have conspired against me. There is none that showeth me that my son hath made a league with the son of Jesse. And there is none of you that is sorry for me, or showeth me that my son hath stirred up my servant against me, to lie in wait at this day. So he's so paranoid. He thinks David is just like lying in wait to come get him, and that Jonathan is like the inside mole helping all this. He has this whole thing going on in his head that's not even real. It's not even what's happening. It's the other way. Everybody's scared of him. He's lying in wait for other people. He has this convoluted thought, and he's now begun to believe it. And now he's trying to get other people to believe something that he made up all in his head. It's all from his imagination. It's not happening. It's not real. But now people are believing it, because people are like, oh, no, this person cannot be that crazy to just come up with some stuff off the top of their head and then just like act on it, and then be literally seriously afraid. Like, could a person be that afraid without somebody actually ever giving them a reason to feel that way? Well, in this text, Saul's really doing all this, has men guarding him. He's literally convinced that David is now bribing people and giving them money and promising them land and vineyards and to be captains over thousands to get them to come with him against Saul. And none of this is happening. It's not true. It's not happening. It's the furthest thing from the truth. But it's so elaborate and so crazy that, I mean, like, how could you not believe that it was true? Would a person go through all these lengths to do all this over something that really isn't true? No, we'll see. So he goes like, my son is stirred up. Then he blames Jonathan. Jonathan did this. Jonathan's actually the one really trying to be king. He stirred up David against me, and then they're going to come together. They're going to take me over so they can reign. Like, he's like tripping, right? So then look who speaks. Our buddy from the previous chapter. So as he's going on saying all this, verse 9, then answered Doeg the Edomite, which was set over the servants of Saul, and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming in Nob to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. He's like, all right, I believe you. He's like one crazy man to another. How about this? I know I saw him. Nobody else is gonna say anything. 'Cause everybody else, it feels like just like when Saul was trying to kill Jonathan for eating honey on a pledge that Jonathan didn't even hear about. The men were like, hey, we're with you because we're loyal to the throne. Like, but this is too far. And as he's talking, they're all standing there listening like, he's the king. Our job is to protect the king. Let him talk. We're going to do what he wants. Stand around him. But Doeg just adds a little kindling to the fire. Right? I saw him. He was in Nob. And he came to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. Now, before I showed you in chapter 14 how Ahiab was the son of Ahitub. And then it says Ahimelech. So these very much so could be the same person, okay? So it's not somebody that Saul doesn't know. He's in the territory of the Benjamites. He is a priest. He's one of the sons of Eli. Now it's like starting to come together, okay? So verse 10. And he inquired, this is Doeg still talking, and he inquired of Yahuwah for him and gave him victuals and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. He lied. Ahimelech never never inquired of Yah for David. If you go back where we just went and it says, David came, he says, I'm a business for the king, I need bread. He said, we don't have any common bread, all I have is this set apart bread. Have you been with women? No. All right, take the bread. David goes, do you have a sword? All I have is the sword that right, is not what, it wasn't the sword that David acquired, right? The one you killed the Philistine with, that's what I have here. And it also says that he didn't put in the part where it says Ahimelech was afraid. So it wasn't like he was doing it because he, was like, oh, go David, go get Saul. No, he was just like, hey, you're here, this is real suspicious, come get what you came to get. Like my aunt does, wrap it up. It's time for you to go. Just keep it moving. All right, it wasn't this, it wasn't as Doeg painted it. Now underneath his name, friend of the king, a brother of the king, Yah put him there in that place and made him obedient in that moment. But it wasn't as it was being painted by Doeg. So he says, and he inquired of Yahuwah for him and gave him victuals and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Verse 11. Then the king sent to call Ahimelech the priest and the son of Ahitub and all his father's house, the priests that were in Nob, and they came all of them to the king. So, if you thought you did something wrong, you wouldn't be coming. You run, right? Ahimelech's like, all right, this obviously it's normal. In the passage before, Saul had asked Ahimelech, who it says Ahiab, to bring actually the ark of Yah to the place. It never says if he did it or not, which I'm probably pretty sure we don't know. But these are not people who are strangers to each other. So if Saul calls the priest of Yah from the Benjamite territory to himself, it seems normal, right? So he brings him, he says, call him and all of his father's house. So they go. And they came all of them to the king, right? So Doeg sets it up. He tells the story. He is painting a picture that Ahimelech has committed what we would call treason, where he has sided with an outsider who is after, or a person who's trying to kill the king, and now the king has to do something about it. That's how he kind of painted the picture. All right. So, okay. So Saul, in verse 12, and Saul said, "Hear now, thy son of Ahitub." And he answered, "Here I am, master." Like he wasn't coming on the shady stuff or anything, right? And Saul said unto him, "Why have you conspired against me, that thou and the son of Jesse, why have you conspired against me, thou and the son of Jesse, and that thou hast given him bread and a sword, and has inquired of Yah for him, that he should rise against me to lie in wait at this day?" So he literally repeats exactly right back what Doeg said, right? Verse 14. Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, "And who is so faithful among thy servants as David, which is the king's son-in-law, and goeth at thy bidding, and is honorable in thine house?" So he's saying, wait. What has David done? Why would me giving David anything mean that I did something wrong? Who would I trust more than David when it came to you and your house? He's your son-in-law. He hasn't done anything wrong. Why would I not trust him? But he said, 15, "Did I then begin to inquire of Yah for him? Be it far from me." He's like, okay, yeah, I gave him a sword, and of course I gave him bread. Like, if I hadn't have, wouldn't you have been mad at me? Like, he's your son-in-law. He said, "But as far as inquiring of Yah for him, that wasn't it. Be it far from me. Let not the king impute anything unto his servant, nor to all his house of my father. For the servant knew nothing of all this, less or more." So he's saying, the bread, the sword, yes, I'm not gonna. Why wouldn't I have? But inquiring of Yah for him, don't put that lie on me. That's not what happened. I'm telling you, I'm not lying to you. Okay. Verse 16. And the king said, "Thou shalt surely die, Ahimelech." It's Saul always killing somebody. Like, it's just like that's his like go-to, right? He said, "Thou shalt surely die, Ahimelech, thou and all thy father's house." All based on a lie, by the way, that was padded by Doeg the Edomite. And the king said to the footmen that stood about him, remember all those men that are standing around him, "Turn and slay the priests of Yahuwah, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled, and they did not show it to me. But the servant of the king would not put forth his hand to fall upon the priests of Yah." So he turned to those men and said, "Kill them all. Not kill them all who I don't know who they are. Kill Yah's priest." So you're telling somebody, you are putting yourself in a position to kill Yah's servant, and you're calling them by what they are. They're not your servants. They're not your priests. He's like, kill Yah's priest. Whew. And he's doing it in a way which is so convoluted that he's right and righteous, right? Like a person can, just a regular human can say, and kill Yah's priests, and kill Yah's messengers, and kill, like you've lost your mind so far that now you're pronouncing death upon people who have been set apart to do the work of Yah. Amazing, right? So all the servants of the king were like, no. They didn't say no. They just didn't. I mean, it says, and they would not put forth their hand to fall upon the priests of Yah. They're like, we work for the kingdom and Yah. You're trying to tell us to kill Yah's priests? No. You will just have to kill us, because we're not going to do that. They had sense enough to say, just no. Like, can you imagine the scene where these men are all standing here? This is Ahimelech in his father's house, and then you have all of Saul's, garrison that are guarding around him, and he's like, kill him, and nobody moves. Kill him, kill all of Yah's priests, and they're like, still standing there, like, pretty much, right? And the king said to Doeg, turn thou and fall upon the priests. So none of them would do it. So you turned to this Edomite and you said, now you kill him. And Doeg the Edomite turned, and he fell upon the priests and slew on that day fourscore and 5 persons that did wear the linen ephod. There's a couple reasons, outside of Saul just being out of his mind, that nobody listened to him. And on top of that, there's a priest in Yah. But also, how do they know what Doeg said was true? You got Ahimelech saying one thing, that's not what happened, that's not what I did, right? You have Doeg saying one thing, oh yeah you did, right? So then he turns to Doeg, well, since you saw it, you kill him. And Doeg, knowing he didn't see it, knowing that he did not see Ahimelech inquire of Yah, kills the priest based on a lie, based upon his own made-up lie. He was willing to follow through and kill the priest over something he knows he lied about. So it's so interesting because oftentimes we base the validity of what people do and how they act on what they're willing to do to uphold that thing. So if a person, we'll see it later on, but Solomon, right, had to judge between a woman who had a baby and the baby died, and then took another woman's baby, and swore that it was the other way around. And who do you believe? The one, they could both be lying, right? Or, I mean, one's lying and one's telling the truth, I guess, because there's still a baby. And Solomon's judgment on that, because it was a difficult judgment to make, is so righteous, and it was so wise that today, even on the books in American law, there's a thing called split the baby, which is this idea that, okay, if you say it's yours and you say it's yours, how about I kill it and give you both a piece? Well, he finds out who the mother of that child is, because she goes, never mind, give it to her. And the other lady said, oh yeah, it's split in half. You know that's not your baby. You wouldn't want the baby split in half. The real mother would say, just take the baby. I'd rather have my baby live, right? So a person who lies will go to great lengths, but there's always this tweak in their lie that shows you who the person is that's telling the truth and who isn't. But it takes wisdom to determine or to judge between those two. In this case, it looks as if Ahimelech is lying and then Doeg is lying, right? And the only person that knows and can judge between the two is Yah and essentially David, because he's the other witness and he's not there. So instead of Saul saying, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, right? He goes to the person who made up the lie and then tells him to kill the priest. And of course he's going to do it to uphold his lie, right? The priest has nothing to lie about. Doeg has a point to prove now, and him killing them is his way of saying, see, I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't righteous. I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't right. But we all know he's not right because we read the account of what actually happened. All right, so, oh my goodness. So, verse 11. Then the king sent to the house of Ahimelech, who are faithful. Okay, here we go. And verse 18, and the king said to Doeg, turn thou and fall upon the priest. And Doeg the Edomite turned and fell upon the priest, and slew on that day fourscore and 5 persons. So fourscore, that's 85 people, 85 priests, not just people, 85 of Yah's priests that did wear a linen ephod. So they were dressed in their garment of servitude to Yah, and he slays 85 of them. So he didn't just kill Ahimelech. He went as far to kill 85 of Yah's priests. No, he's gone. Verse 19, and Nob, the city of the priests, smote he. So he didn't just, now you kind of see what caliber of man this was that was detained. He's a monster. Like, he has no governor. He has no boundaries. He has no law. He has no loyalty to anybody but himself, really. And this is the kind of person that Saul has chosen to join himself up with. So he goes to the city of the priests, and with the edge of the sword, so he's not a weak fighter, because he's doing this on his own. And remember, the priests were also men of battle. The priests knew how to defend themselves. Think of like Shaolin Temple, monks. They know how to fight. They know how to defend their families. It was not just a thing of not in our culture. This is something that they would have known how to do. So he kills 85 and 80 persons, but remember, they don't have a weapon. You remember Ahimelech said, the only sword we have here is the sword of Goliath. They didn't, I guess maybe it wasn't a need. And I know at one point, if you go back, the Philistines actually got all the Israelites' weapons, if you go back a little bit further. So there could be a bunch of reasons why they didn't have weapons within their territory, but then you have Saul and his men with weapons, and then you give this crazy Edomite a weapon, Doeg, and he has free reign of literally murder. It's the killing. This is unrighteous, unjust murder. Okay, so he goes to the city of Nob, and he kills both men and women and children and sucklings and oxes and asses and sheep with the edge of the sword. It's almost like how I see it in my mind, and I could be completely wrong. This man was detained before Yah because he was completely out of his damn mind. Like, he was ticky, and he's almost like this monster. And Saul calls this monster, and he lets him loose on Yah's priestly city. And he doesn't just, like, once he tastes blood, if you will, he doesn't stop at just like Ahimelech. He kills 85 priests, and then he goes to Nob, and he kills men and women and children and babies. Sucklings are babies who are nursing babies, and then oxes and asses and sheep. He just goes like absolutely crazy, just killing up everything, right? And one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. One. Okay? I think it's very it's sick. I don't know another word for it, and I don't know if you are feeling the weight of what just happened. Like, it's terrible. And so Ahitub flees. Abiathar flees after David. The sad part is that all this killing and all this stuff, it's sad because it also fits into prophecy as well. Because when Eli, in 1 Samuel chapter 2, from chapter 2, verse 27 to 4:22, when his sons were Phineas, what's the other son's name? Phineas and, let me go back. So verse, chapter 2. Hophni and Phinehas. I'm like Phineas. Hophni and Phinehas were the two sons of Eli who were misusing Yah's sacrifice and his people and taking advantage. And Yah gives a prophecy through Samuel that there will, the sons of Eli will not go down without going down to the grave in a very, very traumatic way. And it actually happens here. But it doesn't mean that what Doeg did was right. It's just saying that Yah's word has the ability to perform and do what it's supposed to do all the way through. And it happens in this case, which is very, very unfortunate that this many people had to die because of a person's lie, essentially. So Abiathar escapes after David, verse 21, and Abiathar showed David that Saul had slain the Yah's priests. It's very interesting that the person that gives the commandment to do the killing is held responsible for the deaths. So it doesn't say that Doeg had slain Yah's priest. It said that Saul had, because Saul gave the charge for it to happen. You gave an outsider charge to pursue after Yah's priest without restraint, over his people without restraint. All over again, a complete lie. Not just the lie of Ahimelech, but the fact that David was even pursuing anyone to begin with. So verse 21, he shows this to David, and David said unto Abiathar, I knew it that day, when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of thy father's house. Abide with me, fear not, for he that seeks my life seeketh thy life, but with me thou shalt be in safeguard. David still trusts that Yah is protecting him. even in the midst of all of this. And can you imagine how David feels? Because he partly is going to feel responsible. Like, had I never gone, or had I just saw, Doeg and kept going, maybe this wouldn't happen. And he's carrying the weight of that on him. That weight was so heavy on David that he penned Psalm 52. Turn me to Psalm 52. And you're going to get David's thoughts on what happened. Psalm 52, and at the beginning the title is To the Chief Musician, Mashkil, a Psalm of David when Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul and said unto him, David is come to the house of Ahimelech. Verse 1. Mind you, it's about Doeg. Why boastest thou thyself in mischief, O mighty man? The goodness of Elohim endureth continually. Thy tongue deviseth mischief, and like a sharp razor working deceitfully. Isn't that what Doeg did? Right? Thou lovest evil more than good, and lying rather than to speak righteousness, Selah. So he's literally, you lied, you love evil, there's nothing good in you. Thou lovest all devouring words, O thou deceitful tongue. Yah shall likewise destroy thee forever, and he shall take thee away and pluck thee out of thy dwelling place, and root thee out of the land of the living. Selah. The righteous also shall see and fear, and shall laugh at him. Lo, this is the man that made not Elohim his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches, and strengthened himself in his wickedness. He's like, this will come around full circle. Nothing he's writing it, it's almost, most of us wouldn't even think this would be something you would write in a psalm, like the destruction of another person. And you know what? You are going to get what you have coming to you for the wickedness that you have done. And you lied. David stands as a witness in this. It had to be written because he was the only other person that could confirm that it was a lie. So he pens the psalm and says, you lied. That wasn't what happened. You're wicked and you're deceitful and you love lies. And you did this all based upon your own mischief and your own wickedness. Verse 8. But I am like a green olive tree in the house of Elohim. I trust in the mercy of Elohim forever and ever. I will praise thee forever because thou hast done it. And I will wait on thy name, for it is good before thy saints. David's like, I'm going to wait. I know Yah is not letting this happen for nothing. And in that level of just anguish and despair, being able to look back and to trust Yah, that just the other day I'm running, me and my best friend is the son of this king who is in place, who is losing it, and I'm on the run and I have to set up my family, and I'm really just trying to keep it all together. And then here comes Abiathar with this news that the man who helped me along my way because he was obedient to Yah and saw no evil in me is now dead. But not just him, but 85 priests and a whole village of people. And how am I supposed to sustain through this? How am I not supposed to lose it? Do I just give up? Do I just hand myself over? But no, wait. I have to trust Yah. I have to bring it all in. So he's writing this, and it's almost like he's writing, and he's like, this Doeg, and he did it, and it's like he stops. He says, you know what? But I have to look back on the truth of all this. I didn't kill the people. I didn't put myself in this position. I'm a green olive tree. And Yah is still in control. And I'm going to still praise Yah. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to still praise Yah because I can wait on him and I can trust him. And the way that I handle myself in this space and in this time is going to be good for the saints, because everybody is confused. Nobody knows what's happening. But if I just wait, And if I just wait, let me get off my tangent, let me get off my rambling, and all of this about this, wait, Yah's in control. And he's not going to let anything happen that he's not going to recompense his enemies for. And he's not going to let the lives of those go down. And I'm after his own heart, and I'll be obedient, and I'll make sure that when I lead and when he does what he's supposed to do with me, that his name will be exalted. And that's how David reflects. And that's how he ends pretty much his conversation with Abiathar. He says, "Abide thou with me, fear not, for he that seeketh my life seeketh thy life. Be with me, and thou shalt be in safeguard." I know that was heavy. It doesn't end necessarily on a good note, but all this has to happen so that when Yah does do what he's going to do, we see the journey. We see that everything's playing out, sadly, exactly as it's supposed to and as it has to, so that Yah, in the end, can turn everything around the way that he sees fit. Go ahead for next week, read ahead to chapter 23, and we'll resume with chapter 23. I hope you guys are all staying safe. I hope you are staying healthy. For those of you who are in hot spot areas like New York and, the Bay Area, here in California and Southern California, I'm praying for you guys. And we have the wisdom and the ability and the understanding of how to wait on Yah and how to be mindful and wise of the times and act accordingly. So, until next time, shalom.